A simple question from an angry 12-year-old boy was about to change everything. Why do you have to bring politics into F1? Just drive the car. The paddock at Silverstone fell silent. Security stepped forward. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula-born world champion and outspoken activist, looked down at the mixed race boy in the Max Verstappen cap. Instead of dismissing him or walking away, Lewis did something unexpected. He knelt down to the boy's level and asked, "What's your name, young man?" No one could have predicted how this confrontation would transform not just the boy's life, but the conversation around activism in sports, or that the words spoken on the podium days later would inspire thousands around the world to rethink what it means to use your platform for good. Marcus, Reed's heart pounded as he squeezed through the crowd at Silverstone. The smell of rubber and fuel filled the air. It was his first time at a real Formula One race, and everything felt bigger and louder than it looked on TV. "Keep up, Marcus," his dad, Theo, called over his shoulder. "We don't want to miss the drivers arriving." Marcus adjusted his orange Max Verstappen cap and hurried to catch up. His bright orange Number 33 t-shirt made him stand out among the sea of Mercedes silver and Ferrari red. At 12 years old, he was just tall enough to see through gaps in the crowd, but still small enough to slip between adults when needed. "Do you think we'll really see Max up close?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking with excitement. Theo smiled down at his son. It was good to see Marcus happy. These moments had been rare since Elena died 2 years ago. "That's why we came early and got these special paddock passes," Theo said, pointing to the lanyards around their necks. "It cost a month's wages, but it's worth it." The paddock was the area behind the garages, where drivers and teams entered the track. Fans with special passes could gather behind barriers for a chance to see their heroes up close. "Look, there's Lando Norris!" someone shouted, and a crowd rushed toward the McLaren driver. Marcus stood on his tiptoes, but could barely see the top of Lando's head. "We should find a better spot," Theo suggested. They moved away from the growing crowd and found a place near the Mercedes entrance. Only a few people stood there. "Why aren't more people waiting here?" Marcus asked. "Probably because Lewis Hamilton usually arrives last," Theo explained. "But that means we might get a better view when he does show up." Marcus frowned at the mention of Lewis Hamilton. "I don't want his autograph anyway." Theo looked down at his son with concern. "I thought you liked Lewis. You used to cheer for him when you watched races with your mom." "That was before he started bringing politics into everything," Marcus muttered. "Max just focuses on racing." Theo sighed. He wasn't sure where Marcus had picked up these opinions, probably from social media or his new friends at school. Since Elena died, Marcus had changed in ways that worried Theo. His son seemed angry at the world, and lately, he'd been rejecting anything connected to his Jamaican heritage, the heritage he shared with his mother. "Lewis has won 7 world championships, same as Michael Schumacher," Theo reminded him. "He's one of the greatest drivers ever." "Whatever," Marcus mumbled, kicking at the ground. A buzz ran through the crowd, and people began pointing toward a black Mercedes pulling up. The car door opened, and out stepped Lewis Hamilton. He wore a bright purple outfit with a matching face mask that he lowered as he approached the fans. His hair was in neat braids, and colorful bracelets decorated his wrists. Camera flashes popped like lightning as Lewis moved toward the barrier. He stopped to sign autographs and take selfies with fans. Marcus watched as Lewis talked to a little girl in a wheelchair, kneeling down to her level and spending extra time with her. When Lewis got closer to their spot, people around them began shouting his name. Theo nudged Marcus. "Do you want to ask for his autograph after all?" Marcus shook his head firmly. As Lewis approached, The driver noticed Marcus's bright orange Verstappen gear standing out in the sea of Mercedes fans. Instead of ignoring him, Lewis smiled and walked directly toward the boy. "I like your hat, young man," Lewis said, his voice friendly. "It's good to see fans supporting all drivers." Something bubbled up inside Marcus, all the confusion and anger he'd been feeling since his mom died. Before he could stop himself, he blurted out, "Why do you have to bring politics into F1? Just drive the car." The words rang out during a moment of quiet. People nearby gasped. Theo's face went pale with shock. "Marcus!" Theo whispered harshly, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. Two security guards stepped forward, but Lewis raised his hand to stop them. The seven-time world champion looked at Marcus with calm, steady eyes. "What's your name, young man?" Lewis asked quietly. Marcus swallowed hard. His moment of bravery evaporated under Lewis's gaze. Marcus," he stammered. "Well, Marcus," Lewis said, his voice neither angry nor defensive, "that's a fair question. Would you like to talk about it?" The crowd had gone silent. Everyone watched the unexpected exchange between the superstar driver and the boy in Verstappen gear. I don't know," Marcus mumbled, suddenly wishing he could disappear. Lewis glanced at Theo, taking in the situation with understanding. "Is this your dad?" Marcus nodded. "Sir," Lewis said to Theo, "would it be okay if I had a short conversation with your son? Just over there, where it's quieter." He pointed to a tent area nearby with Mercedes logos. Theo looked stunned. "Of course, Mr. Hamilton. And I'm so sorry about—" "No need to apologize," Lewis interrupted with a gentle smile. "Sometimes the most important conversations start in unexpected ways." Lewis's press officer looked nervous. "Lewis, we're on a schedule. The team meeting. This is more important," Lewis said firmly. "Please let Toto know I'll be a few minutes." "Late!" He turned back to Marcus and Theo. "Follow me, if you'd like. No pressure." As Lewis walked toward the tent, Theo leaned down to Marcus. "You don't have to go if you don't want to," he whispered. "But that was really rude, and this is a chance to apologize properly." Marcus bit his lip, conflicted. Part of him wanted to run away. Another part was curious about what Lewis Hamilton might say to him. "I'll go," he decided. They followed Lewis to the tent, aware of the stairs following them. Inside, it was cooler and quieter. Lewis removed his face mask completely and sat down, gesturing for Marcus and Theo to take seats across from him. "So, Marcus," Lewis said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, "you think I should just drive the car and keep my opinions to myself?" Marcus expected Lewis to be angry, but the driver's voice was genuinely curious. For a moment, Marcus couldn't find his words. Then he thought about what his friends at school said, what people posted online, and he found his courage again. "My dad and I came here to watch racing, not hear about politics," Marcus said. "That's all I meant." Lewis nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. Racing is why I'm here too. It's what I love most." He paused, studying the boy's face carefully. "Can I ask you something, Marcus? What does politics mean to you?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He hadn't expected Lewis Hamilton to ask for his opinion. It's when people argue about things that don't matter to racing," Marcus said finally. "Like when you talk about stuff that has nothing to do with cars." Lewis's expression remained kind, but his eyes grew serious. "What if those things matter to me as a person, not just as a driver? Do you think I should pretend they don't exist when I put on my racing suit?" Before Marcus could answer, Lewis asked another question. "Do you have any heroes, Marcus? Besides racing drivers, I mean." Marcus thought about it. "My mum," he said quietly. "But she died 2 years ago." Something shifted in Louis's expression. A flash of understanding and compassion. "I'm very sorry to hear that," Louis said. "Would you tell me a little about her?" And that was the moment everything began to change. Theo watched his son talking with Lewis Hamilton and felt a knot in his chest. The way Marcus mentioned Elena so casually to a stranger surprised him. At home, they barely spoke of her anymore. The pain was still too raw. As Marcus began telling Louis about his mother, Theo's mind drifted back to when he first met Elena, Kingston at university in Liverpool. She had been studying nursing while he trained as a plumber. Elena's parents had come to England from Jamaica in the 1970s, bringing their music, food, and vibrant culture with them. "My wife was Jamaican-British," Theo said suddenly, interrupting Marcus. Both Louis and Marcus looked up at him. "Like your father, I believe," he added, nodding to Louis. Louis smiled. "Yes, my dad's family came from Grenada. Caribbean roots." Theo nodded, then fell silent again. He never knew what to say about these things. Elena had been the one who talked to Marcus about his heritage and identity. She made Jamaican food on Sundays and played reggae music while dancing with Marcus around the kitchen. She told stories about her parents and their journey to England. She made their son proud of being mixed race. But since Elena died of breast cancer 2 years ago, all that had stopped. Theo didn't know how to cook ackee and saltfish. He couldn't tell the stories the way Elena did. He didn't know how to help Marcus embrace his Jamaican heritage or navigate being mixed race in a mostly white school. Louis was talking to Marcus about karting now, asking if he'd ever tried racing himself. Marcus shook his head, but his eyes lit up at the question. "Dad says it's too expensive," Marcus explained. "It is," Louis agreed. "My dad worked 3 jobs to keep me racing. It shouldn't be that way, but that's why I've started programs to help kids from all backgrounds get into motorsport." Louis glanced at his watch. "I really should get to my team meeting. But I've enjoyed talking with you, Marcus." As Louis stood, Theo felt a rush of shame. His son had been rude to a 7-time world champion, yet Louis had shown nothing but kindness in return. "Mr. Hamilton," Theo said quickly, "I want to apologize for what Marcus said earlier. It was disrespectful." Louis waved away the apology. "No harm done. Marcus was honest about his feelings, and I respect that." He turned to Marcus. "I'd like to continue our conversation if you're interested. Would you and your dad like to be my guests for the rest of the weekend? I can arrange special passes." Marcus's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" Louis confirmed. "I think we have a lot more to talk about, and I'd like to show you what Formula One is about beyond just the racing." After Louis left to meet with his team, Theo and Marcus walked back to the public area of the track in stunned silence. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Why did he do that? I was mean to him." Theo put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I think he saw something in you, son." What Louis had seen, Theo realized, was what he himself had been trying to ignore. A boy struggling with his identity, angry at the world after losing his mother. Later that evening, in their hotel room in Northampton, Theo watched Marcus scrolling through Lewis Hamilton's Instagram account. "Did you know Louis started a commission to get more black people into motorsport?" Marcus asked. "And he started his own team in Extreme E to give opportunities to female drivers?" "Sounds like politics to me," Theo said with a small smile. Marcus looked up sharply, then saw his dad was joking. "I didn't really understand what he was doing before," Marcus admitted. "I just repeated what I heard other kids saying." Theo sat down on the bed next to his son. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. And it's not easy for me to say." Marcus put down his phone. "I've been failing you since your mom died," Theo said, his voice cracking. She would have known how to talk to you about being proud of your Jamaican heritage. She would have helped you handle the bullies at school who say nasty things about your skin color. How did you know about that? Marcus asked quietly. I'm your dad. I notice when you come home from school upset. I notice when you stopped wanting to eat Caribbean food or listen to your mom's music. Theo took a deep breath. I just didn't know what to do about it. Your mom was always better at those conversations. Marcus leaned against his dad's shoulder. I miss her. Me too, son. Every day. The kids at school started saying Lewis Hamilton was always complaining about racism and making everything about race. They said he should just drive and stop talking about politics. Marcus looked down at his hands. I started saying it too, because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want them to target me instead. Theo felt a fresh wave of guilt. He'd been so lost in his own grief that he hadn't protected his son from this pain. Your mom would have known what to say to those bullies, Theo said. She never let anyone make her feel small. Lewis doesn't either, Marcus said thoughtfully. He stands up for what he believes in, even when people tell him to just drive. Theo nodded. Maybe that's why he wanted to talk to you. He sees something of himself in you. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Dad, do you think Mom would be disappointed in me for what I said to Lewis today? The question hit Theo like a punch to the stomach. No, Marcus. She would understand you're just trying to find your way, but she would want you to be proud of who you are, all of who you are. Theo realized it was time to stop avoiding the difficult conversations. Elena wouldn't want Marcus to reject his heritage. She would want him to embrace it, to stand tall and proud like she always did, like Lewis Hamilton did. Tomorrow, they would return to the track as Lewis Hamilton's special guests, and Theo promised himself that this would be the beginning of a change for both of them. The next morning, Marcus woke up early, too excited to sleep. He sat by the hotel window watching the sunrise, his mind racing with thoughts about meeting Lewis Hamilton again. You're up early, Theo said, yawning as he got out of bed. Nervous about today, Marcus nodded. What if Lewis changed his mind? What if he was just being nice yesterday, but doesn't really want us there? He seemed sincere to me, Theo said, putting the kettle on for tea. But if he did change his mind, we still have our regular tickets. We'll have a great day either way. When they arrived at Silverstone, a Mercedes team member was waiting for them at the gate. She wore a silver and black uniform with the Mercedes logo and had a clipboard in her hand. Mr. Reed and Marcus? She asked with a smile. I'm Sophia from Mercedes. Lewis asked me to meet you and bring you to the team. She handed them each a lanyard with special passes that read, Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 Team, VIP Guest in bold. Letters. These will give you access to areas most fans never see, Sophia explained as she led them through security. Lewis is in a strategy meeting right now, but he'll meet you afterward. They followed Sophia past crowds of regular ticket holders and through several security checkpoints. With each barrier they passed, the crowds got smaller and the security tighter. Finally, they reached the heart of the F1 paddock. This is incredible, Marcus whispered to his dad. Teams had set up temporary buildings that looked like small glass and metal palaces. Famous people walked by casually. Marcus spotted former drivers, TV presenters, and even a famous actor. Sophia led them to the Mercedes hospitality area, a sleek two-story structure with tinted windows. Inside, it was cool and quiet, with modern furniture and TV screens showing data from the track. Please help yourselves to drinks and snacks, Sophia said, pointing to a buffet table. Lewis should be here in about 15 minutes. After she left, Marcus turned to his dad with wide eyes. This is where the real F1 happens. Theo looked just as amazed. I've watched F1 for 20 years and never seen this side of it. They were sampling pastries from the buffet when Lewis walked in, dressed in Mercedes team gear. He smiled when he saw them. "Good morning. I'm glad you could make it," Lewis said, shaking Theo's hand and giving Marcus a fist bump. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to come back after yesterday." "Are you kidding?" Marcus blurted out. "This is the coolest thing ever," Lewis laughed. "Well, it's about to get cooler. I thought we could talk privately for a bit. And then I'd show you around the garage if you're interested." He led them to a small meeting room with a view of the track. Once they were seated, Lewis's expression grew more serious. "Marcus, yesterday, you asked why I bring politics into F1, Lewis began. "I've been thinking about how to answer that question." Marcus felt his cheeks grow hot with embarrassment. "I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry." "No need to apologize again," Lewis said, kindly. "But I am curious. What made you feel that way?" Marcus glanced at his dad, who nodded encouragingly. "Some kids at school say those things," Marcus admitted. "And I see comments online about you. People say you should just focus on racing." Lewis nodded thoughtfully. "I hear that a lot, but here's the thing, Marcus. I don't see it as politics. I see it as standing up for what's right." Lewis leaned forward. "When I was your age, I was often the only black kid in karting. People said horrible things to me, even threw things at me sometimes. My dad taught me to let my racing do the talking, to prove them wrong on the track." "That's what you did," Marcus said. "You won 7 championships." "Yes, but as I got older, I realized something important," Lewis continued. "Winning races didn't stop the racism in the sport. Being successful didn't change the system. If I want F1 to be better for the next generation of drivers who look like me, who look like you, I have to use my voice." Marcus hadn't thought about it that way before. He looked down at his own brown skin, so similar to Lewis's. "The thing is, Marcus," Lewis said gently, "when people say, 'Don't bring politics into sports,' what they often mean is, 'Don't talk about issues that make me uncomfortable.' But these aren't just political issues. They're human issues." Theo cleared his throat. "Your mother would have said the same thing, Marcus. She never stayed quiet when something was wrong." Lewis smiled. "She sounds like an amazing woman." "She was," Marcus said quietly. Then he looked up at Lewis with new understanding in his eyes. "I get it now. You're not just a driver. You're a person first." Lewis nodded, his eyes warm. "Exactly. Now, how about that garage tour? I think Bono is waiting for us." As they followed Lewis toward the heart of the Mercedes operation, Marcus felt something shift inside him. A new way of seeing not just Lewis Hamilton, but himself too. The Mercedes garage was like nothing Marcus had ever seen. It was spotlessly clean, with polished floors and walls covered in screens showing colorful data charts. Team members in matching uniforms moved with purpose, checking equipment and typing on computers. In the center of it all sat Lewis's race car, sleek, silver, and surprisingly smaller than it looked on TV. "This is where the magic happens," Lewis said, gesturing around the garage. "Every person you see here plays a crucial role in getting the car ready to race." A tall man with headphones around his neck approached them with a smile. "You must be Marcus," he said in a friendly British accent. "Lewis told us you'd be joining us today." "Marcus, this is Peter Bonington," Lewis said. "But everyone calls him Bono. He's my race engineer, the voice you hear talking to me on the radio during races." Marcus's eyes widened. "You're the one who always says, 'It's hammer time.'" Renault laughed. "That's me. Would you like to see how we communicate with Lewis during the race?" For the next half hour, Bono showed Marcus the engineering station, explaining how they monitored everything from tire temperatures to fuel consumption. He even let Marcus try on a headset and speak through the radio system. "Lewis, this is Marcus. It's hammer time," Marcus said, giggling. Lewis, who was talking with some mechanics nearby, gave him a thumbs up and called back, "Copy that, Marcus. Pushing now." As they moved through the garage, Marcus noticed something he hadn't expected. The team wasn't all British. He heard different accents and languages as people worked. "Where is everyone from?" Marcus asked Lewis. "Everywhere," Lewis replied. "Formula One is a global sport. On our team alone, we have people from over 30 countries. That guy there is from Japan," he pointed to an engineer working on computer data. "She's from Brazil," he nodded toward a woman checking tire pressures. "And our team principal, Toto, is Austrian." As if on cue, a tall man in a black Mercedes shirt approached them. "Ah, our special guests," he said with a slight accent. "I'm Toto Wolff. Welcome to our team." Marcus shook Toto's hand, feeling a bit starstruck. He'd seen Toto on TV many times, celebrating wins with Lewis or looking stressed when things went wrong. "Lewis tells me you're a Max Verstappen fan," Toto said with a raised eyebrow and a smile. Marcus blushed and touched his orange cap, which he was still wearing despite being in the Mercedes garage. "I like Max, but I like Lewis too." "It's good to appreciate different drivers," Toto said kindly. "Competition makes everyone better. Without Max pushing him, Lewis might not work so hard." Lewis nodded in agreement. "Toto's right. My greatest rivals have made me a better driver." After Toto left to attend a meeting, Lewis guided Marcus and Theo toward a special room filled with screens showing the entire Silverstone circuit. "This is our strategy center," Lewis explained. "From here, the team can see everything happening on track and make decisions about when I should pit or how to manage the tires." A woman with short red hair greeted them. "I'm Hannah, Senior Strategy Engineer," she said. "We're just running some simulations for qualifying. Would you like to see?" Marcus watched in fascination as Hannah showed them how they used weather, forecasts, tire data, and information about other teams to plan Lewis's qualifying strategy. "There are so many people working behind the scenes," Marcus said, amazed. "I thought it was just the drivers and the mechanics." "That's what most people think," Lewis said. "But F1 is a team sport. There are over 1,000 people who work for Mercedes, and only 2 of us get to drive the cars." Next, they visited the catering area where the team ate meals together. Lewis introduced Marcus to the head chef, a friendly Italian man named Marco. "Lewis is very particular about his food," Marco teased. "All plant-based, very healthy." "You're vegan, right?" Marcus asked Lewis. Lewis nodded. "For a few years now. It started because I care about animals, but it's also better for the planet and my health." "Is that one of your political things?" Marcus asked, then immediately worried he'd been rude again. But Lewis just laughed. "Some people see it that way. I see it as making choices that match my values. We all have values, Marcus. The question is whether we're brave enough to live by them, even when it's not easy." As they continued their tour, Marcus noticed how Lewis treated everyone with respect, from Toto Wolff to the person emptying trash bins. He remembered what his mum used to say: "You can tell a person's character by how they treat people who can do nothing for them." After lunch in the Mercedes hospitality area, they were surprised when another driver stopped by their table. The tall, thin German driver, Sebastian Vettel, dressed in his green Aston Martin gear. "I heard Lewis had some special guests," Sebastian said with a smile. "I hope he's showing you a good time." Louis introduced Marcus and Theo. Marcus had some interesting questions about drivers speaking out on issues beyond racing. "Ah, a tough topic," Sebastian said, taking a seat. "What do you think about it, Marcus?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I think I understand it better now. Louis doesn't talk about these things to be political. He talks about them because they matter to him as a person." Sebastian nodded. "Exactly. For me, it's environmental issues. Some fans tell me to just focus on driving. But how can I not care about the future of our planet? I race cars that use fuel, so I feel responsible to also work on solutions." As Sebastian explained his beach cleanups and his project to create habitat for bees at racetracks, Marcus realized something important. These weren't just racing drivers. They were people with beliefs, fears, and hopes, just like anyone else. When Sebastian left to prepare for a media session, Louis checked his watch. "I need to get ready for practice soon, but there's one more person I think you should meet first." Marcus wondered who it could be. A famous celebrity? Another driver? His question was answered moments later when a door opened, and in walked a familiar figure in orange racing gear, Max Verstappen. Marcus couldn't believe his eyes. His favorite driver was here, in the Mercedes hospitality area, walking straight toward their table. As Max approached with a friendly smile, Marcus felt his heart racing with excitement. This weekend was turning out to be more amazing than he could have ever imagined. "Nice hat," Max Verstappen said, pointing to Marcus's orange cap with a grin. "I can see you have good taste in drivers." Marcus couldn't speak. His racing hero was standing right in front of him, talking to him. Louis laughed at Marcus's shocked expression. "I think you broke my young friend, Max." Max held out his hand to Marcus. "It's nice to meet a true fan. What's your name?" Marcus," he finally managed to say, shaking Max's hand. "You're my favorite driver." "Even when he's in the Mercedes garage?" Max teased, glancing at Louis. "Well, Louis is pretty cool too," Marcus admitted. "He invited us here after After Marcus asked me some tough questions about bringing politics into racing," Louis finished for him. "We've been having good conversations about it." Max pulled up a chair and sat down. "Ah, that old debate. What do you think now, Marcus?" Marcus looked between the two rival drivers, surprised by how friendly they seemed together. On TV, they were fierce competitors who fought for every inch of track. "I think it's more complicated than I thought," Marcus said carefully. Louis explained why he speaks up about things that matter to him. Max nodded. "Everyone has their own way. Louis uses his platform to speak out about important issues. I tend to be more private, but that doesn't mean I don't respect what he does." "You don't think he should just drive the car?" Marcus asked, curious about Max's perspective. "If Louis just drove the car, he wouldn't be Louis," Max said simply, "and Formula One would be less interesting. We're not robots, we're people." Louis smiled at Max gratefully. "That means a lot coming from you, especially since I know we don't always agree on everything." "We don't need to agree to respect each other," Max replied. "On the track, we fight hard. Off the track, we're colleagues." As they talked, two more drivers joined their table. Lando Norris from McLaren and Lewis's teammate, George Russell. "Some kind of secret meeting?" Lando joked, his youthful face breaking into a smile when he spotted Marcus. "Who's the new driver?" "Bit young, isn't he?" Marcus beamed as Louis introduced him and Theo to the other drivers. He couldn't believe he was sitting at a table with 4 F1 stars. "Marcus has been asking about drivers speaking out on social issues," Louis explained to the group. I'm curious what you all think. I'm still figuring it out, Lando admitted. I'm younger than these guys, and sometimes I worry about saying the wrong thing. But I'm learning it's important to stand for something. George nodded. When I first joined Williams, I was so focused on proving myself as a driver that I didn't think much beyond racing. But Lewis has shown that we can use our platform for good. What do you stand for? Marcus asked Lando directly, surprising himself with his boldness. Lando thought for a moment. Mental health, for one thing. Racing looks glamorous, but the pressure can be really hard. I want people to know it's okay to talk about feeling anxious or struggling sometimes. As the drivers discussed their different causes and approaches, Marcus noticed something interesting. They didn't all agree, but they listened to each other respectfully. Max was more reserved about public activism, while Lewis was outspoken. Lando focused on connecting with younger fans, while George talked about environmental initiatives. It's like my school, Marcus said suddenly. The drivers looked at him curiously. What do you mean? Lewis asked. We had this debate in class about whether athletes should talk about politics, Marcus explained. Everyone had different opinions, but my teacher said the important thing was that we listened to each other, even when we disagreed. The drivers exchanged impressed glances. Your teacher sounds smart, Max said. That's how it should be. As practice time approached, the drivers needed to go prepare. Each shook Marcus's hand and thanked him for the conversation. You've given me something to think about, Marcus, Lando said sincerely. After the others left, Max lingered for a moment longer. So, still a fan? He asked Marcus with a smile. Definitely, Marcus replied. But you might have room to support Lewis, too. Max finished for him, not seeming offended at all. That's okay. The sport needs passionate fans like you, who care about the drivers as people, not just the color of their cars. After Max left, Theo looked at his son with pride. You just had a proper conversation with 4 Formula One drivers, and they actually listened to what you had to say. Marcus couldn't stop smiling, but inside, he felt confused. Everything had seemed so simple before. Max was his hero, Lewis was too political, and that was that. Now he was seeing that the real world of Formula One was much more complex and interesting. As Lewis returned to guide them to their seats for the practice session, Marcus had a lot to think about. Maybe there wasn't a right or wrong way to be a driver or a fan. Maybe, like in his school debate, the important thing was listening and respect. And maybe, just maybe, Marcus himself had something valuable to say. While Marcus watched the practice session from the Mercedes garage, Theo stepped outside to take a phone call from work. When he returned, he found Lewis Hamilton standing nearby, also watching the monitors as George Russell took his turn on track. Your son is quite remarkable, Lewis said quietly to Theo. He asks really thoughtful questions. Theo nodded, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. His mother would be proud. She always encouraged him to speak his mind. Would you mind telling me more about her? Lewis asked. I can see her loss has affected Marcus deeply. Theo hesitated. He rarely talked about Elena with strangers, but something about Lewis's genuine interest made him feel it was okay. Her name was Elena. She was a nurse, the kind who remembered every patient's name and family, Theo began. We met at university in Liverpool. She was the smartest, kindest person I've ever known. As they moved to a quieter corner of the garage, Theo found himself sharing more than he'd planned. Elena's parents came from Jamaica in the 70s. She was so proud of her heritage, always making sure Marcus understood that side of his identity too. Theo's voice grew heavier. After she died, I didn't know how to continue that for him. I'm Scottish English. What do I know about Jamaican culture? Lewis listened intently, occasionally glancing at Marcus, who was excitedly watching the cars with one of the Mercedes engineers. The truth is, Theo continued, lowering his voice further, Marcus has been having a hard time at school. There aren't many mixed-race kids there, and some boys have been giving him trouble. Bullying? Lewis asked, his expression darkening. Not physical, but comments, exclusion. It got worse after Elena died. She would have known how to help him stand up for himself. Theo ran a hand through his hair. About 6 months ago, I noticed Marcus stopped mentioning his Jamaican grandparents. He took down the Jamaican flag Elena had put in his room. When I asked why, he said he just wanted to be like everyone else. Lewis nodded understandingly. I know that feeling. When I was young, I sometimes wished I could just blend in too. Racing was mostly white kids, and standing out wasn't always easy. I think that's why he reacted to you the way he did, Theo admitted. He's been rejecting anything that reminds him he's different. When he sees you speaking proudly about race and identity, it forces him to confront what he's trying to avoid, Lewis finished. I understand now. Theo looked over at his son, who was laughing at something the engineer had said. Yesterday was the first time I've seen him mention his mother casually to anyone in months. Something about meeting you broke through a wall. Lewis was quiet for a moment, thinking. When I was around Marcus's age, I faced a lot of racism in karting. My dad taught me something I never forgot. He said, Lewis, when people try to make you feel small because of who you are, stand taller. That's what Elena would have said, Theo replied with a sad smile. Would you mind if I shared something with Marcus about my experiences? Lewis asked. Not to overstep, but please do, Theo said quickly. He might listen to you in a way he won't listen to me right now. They were interrupted as Marcus bounded over, eyes bright with excitement. Dad! Bono showed me how they monitor tire temperatures, and they have this special camera that can see heat signatures on the cars. Marcus was practically bouncing with enthusiasm. Lewis smiled at the boy's excitement. Pretty cool technology, right? Listen, Marcus, your dad and I were thinking of grabbing some lunch after this session. Would you like to join me at the team dining area? They make amazing plant-based burgers. Yes, please, Marcus agreed eagerly. Over lunch, Lewis steered the conversation toward his early racing days. Did you know I was often the only black kid at the track when I started racing? He asked Marcus. Marcus shook his head, mouth full of veggie burger. Some people didn't like that. They said unkind things to me and to my dad. Lewis's voice was calm, but his eyes showed old pain. For a while, I tried to pretend it didn't bother me. I thought if I just focused on racing and ignored everything else, it would go away. Marcus had stopped eating, listening intently. But you know what? I learned, Lewis continued. Ignoring problems doesn't make them disappear. It just gives them power over you. Marcus looked down at his plate. The kids at my school sometimes say things about me being mixed. It was the first time he'd admitted this directly to his father. Theo reached out and put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. What kind of things? Lewis asked gently. They ask why my skin gets darker in summer. They say I don't belong in the cricket team because I'm not really English. Marcus's voice got quieter. After Mom died, it got worse. I don't have her to talk to about it anymore. Theo felt his chest tighten with guilt and sadness. He should have known. He should have done more. That's really tough, Lewis said. You know, when I was struggling with similar things, I found strength in embracing exactly who I am. All parts of me, the English part, the Caribbean part, all of it. Marcus looked up. How? I started by learning more about my heritage. I asked my dad questions. I visited Grenada to see where his family came from. Louis smiled, and I stopped trying to make myself smaller to make other people comfortable. Is that why you speak up about things now? Even when people tell you not to? Marcus asked. Exactly, Louis said. Because I remember what it felt like to be that kid who felt different and alone. I decided that if I ever had the chance to make it easier for someone else, I would. As they finished lunch, Theo could see something changing in Marcus. A straightening of his shoulders, a new thoughtfulness in his eyes. Louis had given his son something Theo couldn't, understanding from someone who had walked a similar path. Now, it was up to Theo to help Marcus continue the journey. Saturday at Silverstone brought clear skies and excitement. Qualifying day was when drivers pushed their cars to the absolute limit, fighting for the best starting position in Sunday's race, Marcus. And Theo arrived at the track early, using their special passes to enter through the paddock entrance. Today, Marcus wore both his orange Verstappen cap and a small Mercedes pin that Louis had given him. Look who's playing both sides now, Theo teased, pointing to the mixed merchandise. Marcus grinned. Louis said I could be a fan of both. He said, passion for the sport is what matters. When they reached the Mercedes garage, the atmosphere was different from yesterday. Mechanics moved with extra purpose, engineers huddled over screens, and there was a buzz of nervous energy. Qualifying is serious business, explained Angela, Louis's physiotherapist, as she welcomed them. Louis is in his mental preparation zone right now, but he asked me to make sure you have the best view of the action. She led them to seats in the back of the garage, where they could see both the car and the wall of data screens. The Mercedes engineers smiled at Marcus in recognition from yesterday, making him feel like part of the team. This is where the real magic happens, a familiar voice said from behind them. Marcus turned to see a man who looked remarkably like an older version of Lewis Hamilton. I'm Anthony, Louis's dad, the man said, holding out his hand to shake. Louis told me about you two, said I should come say hello. It's an honor to meet you, sir, Theo said, shaking Anthony's hand. We've heard about everything you did to support Louis's career. Anthony took a seat beside them as the first qualifying session began. On track, cars roared around Silverstone at incredible speeds. In the garage, everyone watched the timing screens intensely. It wasn't easy getting Louis into racing, Anthony said as they watched. I worked multiple jobs, remortgaged the house, did whatever it took. Marcus looked at Anthony with new interest. Louis said you taught him to let his racing do the talking. Anthony nodded. Had to. Back then, there weren't any black drivers in Formula One. People told us it couldn't be done. He smiled proudly. Now look at him. As Q1 ended and Louis safely made it through to Q2, Anthony asked Marcus about his own interests. Do you race too? Marcus shook his head. Not really. I play cricket at school, and I like drawing cars. He's got quite a talent for art, Theo added. Gets that from his mother. Was she artistic? Anthony asked. Very. Elena could draw anything. Theo's voice softened at the mention of her name. She used to sketch the cars when we watched races on TV. As they talked, Theo found himself opening up to Anthony about his struggles as a single father. To his surprise, Anthony shared similar stories from when Louis was young. After his mother and I separated, I had to figure out a lot on my own, Anthony explained. It's not easy raising a child solo, especially when they're facing challenges you never experienced yourself. Theo nodded in understanding. That's exactly it. Elena would have known how to help Marcus deal with comments about his race. I feel like I'm stumbling in the dark. While the two fathers talked, Marcus was absorbed in watching Lewis prepare for his final qualifying lap. The champion driver sat quietly in a corner, eyes closed in concentration. Then, with practiced movements, he put on his gloves, balaclava, and finally his helmet. "He's been doing that same routine since he was 8 years old," Anthony remarked. "Some things never change." As Lewis walked to the car, he paused briefly beside Marcus and gave him a fist bump. "Wish me luck," he said through his helmet. "Good luck. You'll get pole position for sure," Marcus replied excitedly. Lewis laughed. "I'll try my best." The final minutes of qualifying were intense. Max Verstappen set an incredible lap time that put him provisionally on pole. Then it was Lewis's turn. The garage fell silent as Lewis began his lap. Marcus found himself holding his breath as the timing screen showed Lewis matching Max sector by sector. "Come on, Lewis," Anthony whispered beside him. When Lewis crossed the finish line, he was just 0.46 seconds behind Max, enough for front row, but not pole position. As Lewis returned to the garage, he seemed momentarily disappointed, but quickly shook it off. Before heading to the required press interviews, he stopped by Marcus. "P2. Not bad, right?" he said with a smile. "You were amazing," Marcus replied honestly. "Tomorrow, you'll get him in the race." Lewis nodded. "That's the plan. Will you be watching from here again?" "If that's okay," Marcus said hopefully. "More than okay. You're my lucky charm now." Lewis winked. As Lewis left for interviews, Anthony placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You've made quite an impression on my son," he said. "He doesn't invite many people into his race day world." Marcus beamed with pride. Something that had started with an angry outburst had somehow turned into one of the best weekends of his life. After qualifying, Theo and Marcus returned to their hotel in Northampton. The excitement of the day had left them both tired but happy. After a quick dinner at the hotel restaurant, they headed up to their room. "Dad, this has been the best weekend ever," Marcus said as he flopped onto his bed. "I can't believe we met Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and got to watch qualifying from the Mercedes garage." Theo smiled, sitting on the edge of his own bed. "It's been pretty amazing." As Marcus scrolled through the photos they'd taken that day, Theo watched his son thoughtfully. Something had changed in Marcus. The angry, withdrawn boy of recent months seemed to be fading, replaced by a more confident and thoughtful version. "Marcus," Theo said suddenly, "I need to talk to you about something important." Marcus looked up from his phone, hearing the serious tone in his dad's voice. "I haven't been doing a very good job since your mom died," Theo said quietly. "I've been so focused on work and keeping our life together that I missed what was happening with you at school." Marcus put down his phone. "It's okay, Dad. You've been doing your best." "But it hasn't been enough," Theo insisted. "Your mother would have noticed the bullying. She would have helped you feel proud of your Jamaican heritage instead of letting you hide it." Theo reached into his suitcase and pulled out a small photo album he'd brought with him. It was bound in blue leather with the word "family" embossed on the cover. "I haven't looked at these since the funeral," Theo admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "It hurt too much. But I was wrong to keep them from you." He handed the album to Marcus, who took it with hesitant hands. "Open it," Theo encouraged. Marcus slowly opened the cover. Inside were photos of Elena, his mother. There she was holding baby Marcus in the hospital, her face glowing with joy. Another showed her in traditional Jamaican dress at a cultural festival. Marcus, around age 5, sitting on her shoulders. page after page of memories they'd shared. "She was so beautiful," Marcus whispered, tracing his finger over his mother's smiling face. "She was," Theo agreed, moving to sit beside Marcus. "And she was so proud of being Jamaican. She was proud of you being mixed race. She used to say you got the best of both our worlds." Marcus turned the pages slowly, drinking in images of his mother that he hadn't seen in 2 years. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. "Why are those boys at school so mean about it?" Marcus asked, his voice small. "Mom always made being mixed sound special, because some people fear what's different," Theo said, putting his arm around Marcus's shoulders. "Your mom faced it too, but she never let it change who she was or make her feel ashamed." Marcus wiped his eyes. "I miss her so much, Dad." "Me too, son. Every day." They sat together looking through the album, Theo sharing stories about Elena that Marcus had started to forget. Her laugh that could fill a room, how she danced while cooking, the way she stood up to anyone who tried to make her feel small. After a while, Marcus said, "I think that's why I got angry at Lewis. When he talks about race and identity, it reminds me of Mum. And it hurts." Theo nodded understandingly. "But hiding from those feelings doesn't make them go away. Your mom wouldn't want you to pretend part of you doesn't exist." "I know that now," Marcus said. "Lewis helped me see it. When he talks about being proud of who he is, even when it's hard, it's like he's saying what Mom would say." They continued looking through photos until they reached the last page. There, Elena stood proudly wearing a Lewis Hamilton cap at the British Grand Prix 5 years earlier. She was pregnant with Marcus at the time. "Your mum was a Hamilton fan, you know," Theo said with a smile. "She admired how he broke barriers in the sport. She would have loved seeing you with him today." Marcus touched the photo gently. "I wish I could tell her about it." "She knows," Theo said softly. "Somehow, I think she knows." As they got ready for bed, Marcus placed the photo album carefully on his nightstand. Tomorrow would be race day, the final day of their incredible weekend. But something even more important had happened in this hotel room tonight. "Dad," Marcus said, as Theo turned off the light. "Yes, son. I want to apologize to Lewis properly, tomorrow. And I want to tell him about Mum." "I think he'd like that," Theo replied. "And when we get home," Marcus continued, "can we put Mum's photos back up in the house? And maybe cook some of her Jamaican recipes?" Theo felt his heart swell with both joy and pain. "I'd like nothing better, Marcus. Nothing better in the world." As Marcus drifted off to sleep, the photo of his mother seemed to smile at him from the nightstand. Tomorrow would be a big day. Race day at Silverstone. But tonight had been even more important. Tonight, Marcus had begun to find himself again. Race day at Silverstone dawned gray and wet. Rain tapped against the hotel window, waking Marcus earlier than usual. He sat up in bed and looked at the photo. Album on his nightstand. Memories of last night's conversation with his dad still fresh in his mind. "Typical British summer," Theo mumbled, pulling back the curtains to reveal the dismal weather. "Looks like we're in for a wet race." As they got dressed, Marcus made a decision. He put on the Mercedes cap Lewis had given him, but still wore his Verstappen t-shirt underneath his raincoat. "Supporting both your drivers today?" Theo asked with a smile. Marcus nodded. "They're both amazing in different ways." When they arrived at the circuit, the rain was falling steadily. Fans huddled under umbrellas and ponchos, their excitement undampened by the weather. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Rain always made races unpredictable and exciting. Using their special passes, Marcus and Theo made their way through security and into the paddock. Water puddles splashed under their boots as they hurried toward the Mercedes hospitality area where they'd been told to meet Lewis before the race. Inside, they found Lewis in conversation with his race engineer Bono. When Lewis spotted them, he excused himself and came over. "Race day in the rain," Lewis said with a grin. "My favorite conditions." Marcus took a deep breath. "Lewis, I wanted to say sorry properly for what I said when we first met. I was repeating things I'd heard without understanding them." Lewis's expression softened. "No more apologies needed, Marcus. We've moved past that." "There's something else," Marcus continued, glancing at his dad for encouragement. "My mom was a big fan of yours. She admired how you broke barriers in F1. Lewis looked surprised and touched. "Really? That means a lot to me." Marcus nodded. "She was Jamaican-British, like your dad is from the Caribbean. She took me to watch you race at Silverstone when I was little, before she got sick." Lewis placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Then, I'm especially honored to have you here today. I'll be racing for both of us, and for your mum, too." The moment was interrupted by Toto Wolff announcing it was time for the driver's parade. Lewis needed to go, but before leaving, he arranged for Marcus and Theo to watch the race from the Mercedes garage. "Rain at Silverstone usually means an exciting race," Lewis said with a wink. "Keep your eyes on the start." The pre-race ceremonies were a blur of excitement. The driver's parade, the national anthem, and finally, the grid walk, where cars were positioned for the start. From their spot in the Mercedes garage, Marcus and Theo had a perfect view of both the track and the data screens. "The rain is getting heavier," Toto explained to them as the start approached. "This favors Lewis. He's the best in wet conditions." When the 5 red lights went out and the race began, the garage erupted in noise. 20 cars splashed through water as they accelerated toward the first corner. Max, starting from pole position, got away cleanly, but Lewis made an incredible start. "From second place! He's going for it!" Marcus shouted as Lewis pulled alongside Max into the first corner. The 2 cars ran side by side through the first sequence of turns, neither driver giving an inch. Finally, at Kopp's corner, Lewis found better grip on the outside line and swept past Max into the lead. The Mercedes garage exploded in cheers. Toto pumped his fist, and Bono's calm voice came over the radio. "Great move, Lewis! Perfect execution!" For the next 20 laps, Lewis built his lead, mastering the treacherous conditions while others struggled. Marcus watched in awe as the 7-time champion made driving in the rain look easy. "He's amazing," Marcus whispered to his dad. "It's like the car is part of him." Then, disaster struck. As Lewis navigated through back markers, his right rear tire hit a sharp piece of debris. Instantly, the tire pressure readings on the screen dropped to 0. "Puncture! Puncture!" Bono called urgently. "Box now, Lewis!" Lewis limped back to the pits, losing precious seconds with every corner. When he finally made it in for a tire change, he had dropped from first place all the way down to 15th. The garage mood shifted from jubilation to tense focus. Marcus felt his heart sink. Lewis's race seemed ruined. "Don't worry," Toto told Marcus, seeing his disappointment. "If anyone can come back from this, it's Lewis." What happened next was something Marcus would never forget. Lap after lap, Lewis fought his way forward. He passed one car, then another, finding grip and racing lines where others couldn't. His pace was incredible, sometimes 2 seconds faster than anyone else on track. "He's on a mission," Bono said, watching the timing screens. "We might still get a podium out of this." With 10 laps to go, Lewis had climbed to 6th position. The crowd roared every time he appeared on the big screens, making another bold, overtaking move. "Can he really make it to the podium?" Marcus asked Bono. 3 places to gain in 10 laps? It's possible, but he'll need to overtake some very fast cars. 7 laps from the end, Lewis passed Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren for 5th place. 3 laps later, he caught and passed Charles Leclerc's Ferrari for 4th. Now, only Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari stood between Lewis and a podium finish. With 3 laps remaining, Lewis closed in on Sainz. The Spanish driver defended fiercely, positioning his car perfectly to prevent Lewis from passing. "He needs to try something different," Theo observed, caught up in the excitement. As they approached Copse Corner on the penultimate lap, the same corner where Lewis had passed Max at the start, Lewis made his move. He feinted to the inside, then switched back to the outside line, catching Sainz by surprise. The cars entered the corner side by side, inches apart. There was the slightest touch of wheels as they fought for the same piece of track. For a heart-stopping moment, it looked like both might spin off. Sainz's Ferrari lost grip on the wet surface and slid wide into the gravel trap. Lewis managed to keep control and continued, now in 3rd place. Parts of the crowd cheered while others booed, thinking Lewis had been too aggressive. "That wasn't fair," a fan near the garage entrance shouted. Hamilton pushed him off. Without thinking, Marcus turned around. "No, he didn't. Lewis left racing room but took the better line. That's fair racing." The fan looked surprised to be challenged by a 12-year-old boy, but Marcus continued confidently. The Ferrari lost grip because Sainz tried to stay too far outside where there was more water. Lewis's move was clean. Several nearby fans nodded in agreement, impressed by Marcus's understanding of racing. When Lewis crossed the finish line in 3rd place behind Max, who won, and Lando Norris, who finished 2nd, the Mercedes team celebrated as if he'd won. Coming back from 15th to 3rd at Silverstone, in the rain, was an extraordinary achievement. As Lewis climbed from his car in Parc Fermé and raised his fist in triumph, Marcus felt a surge of pride. This was the driver his mother had admired. A fighter who never gave up, who faced challenges head-on. And now, Marcus understood why. After the race, Theo and Marcus joined the crowd moving toward the podium. Silverstone's main grandstand was packed with fans eager to see the trophy ceremony. The rain had stopped, and patches of blue sky appeared between gray clouds. "Did you see that comeback drive?" Marcus said excitedly, as they found a spot with a good view. Lewis was flying through the field. Theo nodded, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. "One of the best drives I've ever seen. 15th to 3rd in those conditions is incredible." The podium ceremony began with the constructors' representative from Red Bull climbing the steps first. Then came the 3 drivers, Lando Norris taking his place on the 2nd step, Max Verstappen on the top step, and Lewis Hamilton on the 3rd. When Lewis stepped onto the podium, he raised his fist in the air. A gesture Marcus now understood, represented solidarity and strength. Some fans cheered loudly, while others remained quiet. "Why are some people not cheering?" Marcus asked, noticing the mixed reaction. "Some fans don't like it when drivers make gestures they see as political," Theo explained. "But after what we've learned this weekend, I think we know it's more than that." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "It's about identity and standing up for what's right." After the national anthems and trophy presentations, it was time for the interviews. The podium interviewer, a former driver himself, congratulated the 3 men on their performances. "Max, fantastic drive in difficult conditions. You never put a wheel wrong all day. How does it feel to win the British Grand Prix again? Max spoke about his team's strategy and thanked the fans for their support in the rain. Lando talked about his delight at scoring a podium at his home race. Then it was Lewis's turn. The interviewer's question caught everyone by surprise. Lewis, another podium at your home race, but I have to ask, there's been a lot of discussion lately about drivers bringing politics into Formula One. What would you say to fans who think you should just focus on racing? A murmur ran through the crowd. The question seemed designed to stir controversy. Marcus felt a flare of indignation on Lewis's behalf. But before Lewis could answer, Max Verstappen leaned over to the microphone. "Can I say something about that?" Max asked, surprising everyone. The interviewer nodded, intrigued. "Lewis doesn't bring politics into Formula One," Max said clearly. "He brings humanity. There's a difference." The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Lewis looked over at Max with genuine gratitude and surprise. Lando nodded in agreement. When the applause died down, Lewis spoke into the microphone, his voice steady and thoughtful. "Thank you, Max. That means a lot." He paused, then continued. "Racing is my job and my passion. It always has been. But being a voice for change is my purpose. I can't separate who I am from what I do." Lewis looked out at the sea of faces. "This weekend, I met a young fan who asked me a similar question: why I don't just stick to racing. It reminded me how important it is to explain why these issues matter." Marcus felt his heart race as Lewis referenced their conversation, though Lewis didn't mention him by name. "When I was a kid, I didn't see many drivers who looked like me," Lewis continued. "That made me feel like maybe I didn't belong in this sport. No child should feel that way. Not in motorsport, not in school, not anywhere." The grandstand was completely silent now, everyone hanging on Lewis's words. So when I speak up about inclusion or environmental issues or human rights, it's not about politics. It's about creating a world where everyone has the chance to reach their potential. A world we can be proud to leave to the next generation. Lewis's words resonated through the stands. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes, thinking of his mother and how proud she would be to hear this. "One last thing," Lewis said. "To any young person who feels different or struggles to fit in, you belong. Your differences are your strength. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Many people stood, giving Lewis a standing ovation. Even those who had been quiet before seemed moved by the sincerity in his voice. As the three drivers left the podium, the interviewer turned to the camera. Strong words from Lewis Hamilton there, and an unexpected show of support from his rival Max Verstappen with that statement, "He brings humanity, not politics." A powerful moment at Silverstone today. After the ceremony, Marcus and Theo made their way back to the Mercedes hospitality area where the team was celebrating Lewis's remarkable podium finish. Team members were toasting with champagne, and the atmosphere was jubilant. Lewis arrived a short while later, still in his race suit, hair damp with sweat and champagne. When he spotted Marcus and Theo, he came straight over. "What did you think of the race?" he asked Marcus with a smile. "It was amazing," Marcus exclaimed. "The way you came back after the puncture was incredible. And what you said on the podium, I meant every word," Lewis said. "And I hope it helps other kids who feel different, just like our conversations helped you." Lewis looked at Theo. "Your son is special." He asked a tough question that made me think about how I explain my actions to others. Sometimes we forget that not everyone understands our motivations unless we share them. Theo nodded, putting a hand on Marcus's shoulder. He is special. And this weekend has been life-changing for both of us. As they prepared to leave, Lewis gave Marcus a signed race glove, a treasured piece of memorabilia that few fans ever received. To remind you that standing up for what you believe in is never wrong, Lewis said. On their way out of the paddock, they passed a TV showing the sports news. The headline scrolling across the bottom read, "Verstappen, Hamilton brings humanity, not politics, to F1." Above it was footage of the podium moment that was already going viral online. "Dad," Marcus said thoughtfully as they headed toward the car park, "I think I finally understand what Mom saw in Lewis Hamilton. It wasn't just that he wins races." Theo smiled. "What was it then?" "He uses his voice to make things better for people who don't have one," Marcus replied. "Just like Mom did as a nurse." As they drove away from Silverstone, the events of the weekend replaying in both their minds, neither could have imagined how significant that podium moment would become. The next morning, Marcus woke up early in his bedroom in Liverpool. After the excitement of the race weekend, it felt strange to be back in his familiar surroundings. He reached for his phone and was immediately overwhelmed by notifications. "Dad!" he called, rushing into the kitchen where Theo was making breakfast. "Look at this!" Theo looked up from the stove where he was frying eggs. "What is it?" Max's comment about Lewis is everywhere. Marcus showed his dad the screen. "Humanity, not politics," is trending on all social media platforms. Everyone's talking about what happened on the podium. Theo took the phone and scrolled through the news articles. The moment had indeed captured people's attention worldwide. There were videos of the podium interview, opinion pieces about drivers, speaking out on social issues, and countless social media posts from fans and public figures alike. "Look, even other athletes are sharing it," Marcus pointed out. "Football players, tennis stars, everyone." As they ate breakfast, they watched the sports news on TV. The lead story was about the British Grand Prix, featuring the podium moment and reactions from around the sporting world. In a powerful show of solidarity, championship rival Max Verstappen defended Lewis Hamilton's activism during yesterday's British Grand Prix podium ceremony. The news presenter said, "Verstappen's statement that Hamilton brings humanity, not politics, to Formula One has resonated far beyond motorsport, with the hashtag #HumanityNotPolitics trending globally." They showed clips of people discussing what the moment meant to them. A young black girl in a Lewis Hamilton cap talked about feeling represented. A Dutch Max Verstappen fan praised his driver for standing by his competitor off track while battling him on it. "You're famous, sort of," Theo joked as footage appeared of the Mercedes garage with Marcus visible in the background. Marcus's phone buzzed with text messages from school friends who had spotted him on TV. "OMG, was that you in the Mercedes garage?" Texted his friend Dylan. "Did you actually meet Lewis Hamilton?" asked another. Marcus replied, sharing his incredible experience but leaving out the personal details of his conversations with Lewis. Those moments felt private, special. Later that day, as Marcus prepared for school the next morning, he felt both excited and nervous. How would the kids who had teased him react now? Would they be impressed by his Formula One connections or find new reasons to single him out? Monday morning arrived with gray skies and drizzle, typical Liverpool weather. Marcus put on his school uniform and, after a moment's thought, clipped the small Mercedes pin Lewis had given him to his blazer, a small reminder of his weekend and all he had learned. As he walked into school, he immediately noticed people looking at him and whispering. Dylan rushed over. "Mate, you were at Silverstone with Lewis Hamilton. How did that happen?" Marcus found himself surrounded by curious classmates as he explained a simplified version of events. Lewis invited me and my dad to be his guests after we met him in the paddock, he said, keeping the details of their first confrontation vague. He showed us around the Mercedes garage and introduced us to the team. "That's so cool," Dylan said, enviously. "What was he like?" "Really nice," Marcus replied. "He took time to talk to us even though he was busy. And he's even better at driving in the rain than he looks on TV." The morning went well until break time, when Marcus encountered Tyler and his friends, the boys who had teased him most about his mixed heritage. Tyler eyed the Mercedes pin on Marcus's blazer. "So you think you're special now because you met some F1 drivers?" Tyler sneered. Marcus felt his old fear returning, but then remembered Lewis's words about standing tall. He straightened his shoulders. "No," he replied calmly. "But I did learn a lot this weekend." "Like what?" Tyler challenged. Marcus looked him directly in the eye. "Like the fact that my mom was Jamaican, just like Lewis Hamilton's dad is from the Caribbean. Being mixed is my superpower, not something to hide." Tyler seemed taken aback by Marcus's confident response. Some of the other kids watching looked impressed. "Whatever," Tyler muttered, but the usual venom was missing from his voice. As Tyler walked away, a boy named Jaden approached Marcus tentatively. Marcus knew Jaden from math class, but they had never really talked. "Did you really meet Lewis Hamilton?" Jaden asked quietly. Marcus nodded. "And Max Verstappen, too." "That's cool." Jaden hesitated, then added, "My mom is from Nigeria. I'm mixed too, but I don't usually tell people." "The way you just stood up to Tyler was brave." Marcus felt a connection with Jaden he hadn't expected. Being mixed is nothing to be ashamed of. Lewis helped me see that. "Maybe you could tell me more about what Lewis said?" Jaden asked hopefully. "Sure," Marcus smiled. "Want to sit together at lunch?" As they walked to class together, Marcus realized something important. The weekend hadn't just changed him. Through him, it might help others too. The ripples from Silverstone were spreading, just beginning to touch lives far beyond the racetrack. A week after the British Grand Prix, Marcus sat at his desk in his bedroom, a blank piece of paper in front of him. Theo had suggested he write a thank you letter to Lewis Hamilton. In a world of texts and emails, a handwritten letter felt special, more meaningful. Marcus tapped his pen against the paper, trying to find the right words. How could he possibly express everything the weekend had meant to him? Finally, he began to write, "Dear Lewis, thank you for everything you did for me and my dad at Silverstone. I will never forget getting to see inside the Mercedes garage and meeting everyone on your team. I'm sorry again for what I said when we first met. I was repeating things I heard without understanding them. Now I understand why you speak up about things that matter to you." Something amazing happened at school this week. I stood up to the boys who had been saying mean things about me being mixed race. I told them that being mixed is my superpower, not something to be ashamed of. I wouldn't have had the courage to say that before meeting you. I also made a new friend named Jaden. He's mixed too, but he's been afraid to talk about it. We've been hanging out at lunch, and he's even coming over this weekend to watch the next race with me and my dad. My dad has been different since Silverstone too. He put all my mom's photos back up around the house. Yesterday, he tried to cook ackee and saltfish, one of my mom's Jamaican recipes. It wasn't as good as hers, but he promised to keep practicing. I wanted you to know that what you said on the podium about humanity versus politics has changed how people at my school talk about these things. Even my teacher mentioned it in class, when we were discussing current events. Thank you for showing me that standing up for what you believe in takes courage. but it's always worth it. Your friend, Marcus Reed P.S. Your comeback drive in the rain was the best thing I've ever seen. Marcus read the letter over twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in an envelope. Theo had found the address for the Mercedes F1 headquarters in Brackley, where they could send fan mail to Lewis. "Finished your letter?" Theo asked, poking his head into Marcus's room. Marcus nodded. "Do you think he'll actually read it?" "I'm sure he will," Theo said. "You made quite an impression on him." While Marcus had been writing his letter, Theo had been making changes too. The conversation with Anthony Hamilton had stuck with him. The shared experience of raising children solo and helping them navigate their identities. Inspired by Anthony's example, Theo had reached out to Marcus's school to suggest starting a support group for single parents. To his surprise, the headmaster had been enthusiastic about the idea. Their first meeting was scheduled for the following month. Theo had also contacted a Jamaican cultural organization in Liverpool, asking how he and Marcus could get involved. This weekend, they were planning to attend a Caribbean food festival together, something they hadn't done since Elena died. That evening after dinner, as they watched highlights from the British Grand Prix on TV again, Marcus noticed a small card on the mantelpiece that hadn't been there before. It was a photo of his mother at Silverstone 5 years ago, wearing her Lewis Hamilton cap. "I found it in one of the boxes in the attic," Theo explained, following Marcus's gaze. "I thought it should be out where we can see it." The news program switched to an interview with Lewis from earlier that day. He was at a factory opening in Birmingham, a new facility that would provide engineering apprenticeships to disadvantaged young people. "Your humanity, not politics" moment with Max Verstappen has resonated with so many people, the interviewer was saying. "Were you surprised by his support?" Lewis smiled. "It was a powerful moment that I'm grateful for. Max and I are fierce competitors. On track, but we share core values about respect and dignity for all people. That transcends any rivalry." Has the response to that moment surprised you? "What surprised me most," Lewis replied thoughtfully, "are the stories I'm hearing from young people who feel empowered to embrace their identities and speak their truths. That's the real victory, far more important than any trophy." Marcus wondered if Lewis was thinking of him when he said that. The thought made him smile. The next morning, Theo took Marcus to the post office to mail his letter. As they walked home afterward, Marcus noticed a group of younger kids playing in the park. They had set up a pretend podium using park benches, and one boy was raising his fist in the air like Lewis, while another was pretending to be an interviewer. "He brings humanity, not politics," one child declared in an attempt at a Dutch accent, making Marcus laugh. "Looks like you're not the only one inspired by that moment," Theo observed. "It's weird to think we were actually there when it happened," Marcus said, "that we're part of this story somehow." "That's how change happens," Theo replied. "One person speaks their truth, then another adds their voice, and before you know it, something shifts in the world." At home, Marcus added a new photo to his bedroom wall, a selfie he'd taken with Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes garage. He placed it next to a picture of his mother, noticing for the first time how they shared the same warm smile. As Marcus stepped back to look at the photos, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of wholeness. The different parts of his identity no longer seemed to be in conflict. Like the drivers who could be fierce rivals on track, but united in their humanity off it, Marcus was learning that life's complexities could exist side by side. His letter to Lewis was just the beginning. There was so much more he wanted to say, to do, to become. 2 months after the British Grand Prix, Marcus sat in front of the television with Jaden, watching a press conference. Lewis Hamilton stood at a podium wearing a sleek black suit, addressing a room full of reporters and cameras. "Today, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Hamilton Project," Lewis said, his voice steady and passionate. "This initiative will bring underprivileged kids to Formula One races and teach them about the many career paths in motorsport beyond driving." Jayden nudged Marcus excitedly. "Do you think he'll mention your letter?" Marcus shrugged, though his heart beat faster with hope. Since sending his letter, he'd received a signed photo from Lewis with a short note saying, "Thank you for your inspiration." He hadn't expected anything more. "Formula One isn't just about drivers," Lewis continued on screen. "It's about engineers, mechanics, strategists, media specialists, and countless other professionals. Many young people, especially from underrepresented backgrounds, don't realize these careers are possible for them." Lewis paused, looking directly into the camera. "This project was inspired by a young fan I met at Silverstone earlier this year. He reminded me why representation matters and why we must create pathways for all children to follow their dreams, regardless of their background or circumstances." Marcus's jaw dropped. Jayden punched his arm lightly. "That's you! He's talking about you!" Theo, who had been listening from the kitchen, came in wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Did I just hear what I think I heard?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Angela, Lewis's physiotherapist, whom he'd met at Silverstone. "Lewis would like you to be part of the launch event for the Hamilton Project next week in London. Are you available?" Marcus could hardly believe it. He showed the message to his dad, who looked as surprised as he felt. "Can we go?" Marcus asked hopefully. "Of course we can," Theo replied without hesitation. "This is important." The following week, Marcus found himself in a sleek office building in London. The walls were decorated with photos of Lewis throughout his racing career, from karting to his 7 world championships. A small group of people had gathered for the official launch of the Hamilton Project. Lewis greeted Marcus with a warm hug. "I got your letter," he said. "It meant a lot to me." "I didn't think you'd actually read it," Marcus admitted. Lewis smiled. "Not only did I read it, but it helped shape this entire project. When you told me about standing up for yourself at school and helping your friend Jayden, I realized that's exactly what this sport needs more of, that ripple effect of inspiration." A woman with a clipboard approached them. "We're ready to begin." "When you are, Lewis, will Marcus be speaking as planned?" Marcus's eyes widened. "Speaking? Me?" Lewis looked at him. "Only if you want to. I thought it might be powerful for people to hear directly from you about our meeting at Silverstone and what happened after. But if you're not comfortable, I'll do it," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his confidence. His mother would have been proud of him for stepping up. The event was small but significant. Journalists from major sports outlets attended, along with representatives from Formula One teams and potential sponsors. Lewis spoke first about his vision for the project and why increasing diversity in motorsport mattered. "And now," Lewis said, "I'd like to introduce someone very special. This young man asked me a challenging question at Silverstone that led to important conversations about why drivers speak up on issues beyond racing. Please welcome Marcus Reed." Marcus walked to the E3 small podium, his legs shaking slightly. He looked out at the audience, then at his dad, who gave him an encouraging nod, and began to speak. "My name is Marcus Reed. I'm 12 years old from Liverpool. 2 months ago, I met Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone and asked him why he had to bring politics into Formula One." Marcus paused, gathering his courage. "I said that because I was repeating things I'd heard without understanding them. I was being bullied at school for being mixed race, and I thought if I rejected what they called politics, they would accept me. The room was completely silent. Everyone focused on the young boy speaking with such honesty. What I learned from Lewis is that standing up for human dignity isn't politics, it's humanity. After our conversations, I went back to school with the courage to be proud of who I am, all parts of me. I stood up to the bullies and even helped another mixed-race kid at my school find his voice. Marcus looked at Lewis, who was watching him with evident pride. One conversation changed my life. Imagine what could happen if more kids get the chance to see people who look like them succeeding in Formula One, not just as drivers, but in all the jobs that make racing possible. When Marcus finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Several journalists wiped tears from their eyes. Lewis came forward and put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. During the questions that followed, a reporter asked Lewis why he chose to involve Marcus in launching the project. Sometimes we forget that the things we do and say reach further than we imagine, Lewis explained. This young man helped me remember my purpose both on and off the track. His story is proof that representation matters. When young people see themselves reflected in spaces where they've historically been excluded, it changes how they see their future. After the event, as they prepared to return to Liverpool, Lewis took Marcus aside for a private word. "You did brilliantly today," he said. "Your mother would be incredibly proud of you." "How did you know I was thinking about her?" Marcus asked, surprised. Lewis smiled gently. "Because I saw how you touched the photo in your pocket before you started speaking. I do the same thing with my grandmother's picture before races." Marcus pulled out the small photo of his mother that he'd been carrying. "She always believed in standing up for what's right. I forgot that for a while after she died. But you remember now," Lewis said. "And that's what matters." As they said goodbye, Marcus realized something important. This journey that had begun with an angry outburst at Silverstone was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. The desert sun beat down on Abu Dhabi's Yas Marina circuit. It was late November, the final race of the Formula One season. The championship had come down to the wire between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, with just 8 points separating them. Marcus could hardly believe he was here. When Lewis had called personally to invite him and Theo to the season finale. As VIP guests, Marcus had been speechless with excitement. "This is unreal," Marcus whispered to his dad as they walked through the paddock. The track looked like something from the future. Sleek buildings with curved glass walls, palm trees, swaying in the breeze, and yachts floating in the marina beside the circuit. "A lot has changed since Silverstone, hasn't it?" Theo replied, smiling at his son. Indeed, it had. In the months since the British Grand Prix, Marcus had transformed. He'd started a diversity club at his school with Jaden. They'd invited speakers from different cultural backgrounds to talk about their experiences, including Theo, who shared stories about Elena and her Jamaican heritage. Marcus had also begun karting lessons after a local track offered him free sessions when they heard his story. He wasn't planning to become a racer, but he enjoyed understanding the sport better. Theo had changed too. The single parents' support group he'd started was now meeting regularly. He'd made new friends, and for the first time since Elena died, he seemed to be looking toward the future with hope, instead of just getting through each day. As they approached the Mercedes hospitality area, they spotted Lewis sitting quietly on a bench away from the team, seemingly lost in thought. This was unusual. Normally, before a race, Lewis would be with his engineers or in his private room preparing mentally. Lewis looked up and smiled when he saw them. "You made it. Welcome to Abu Dhabi." "This place is incredible," Marcus said, taking in the spectacular setting. "Thank you for inviting us." "I wanted you here for this one," Lewis said, his voice carrying a hint of something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "It feels right somehow, completing the circle." Lewis led them through the paddock, explaining the unique challenges of the Yas Marina circuit. Unlike the cold, wet Silverstone, here the heat was intense, and the race would start in daylight, but finish under floodlights. "This could be my last championship battle," Lewis said suddenly as they paused by the pit wall. Marcus looked up in surprise. "You're not retiring, are you?" Lewis smiled. "Not immediately, no. But I'm thinking about my future beyond racing, about leaving a legacy that matters more than trophies." He guided them to a private area of the Mercedes motorhome and gestured for them to sit. "Before I go to my final preparation, there's something I want to show you, Marcus." Lewis reached into his pocket and carefully removed a small, worn photograph. He handed it to Marcus. The photo showed an elderly black woman with a warm smile and kind eyes. Though the photo was old, the woman's strength of character shone through clearly. "This is my grandmother," Lewis explained. "Carmen. She passed away when I was younger, but her spirit guides everything I do." Marcus handled the photo carefully, aware he was being shown something deeply personal. "I carry this with me during every race, in my race suit pocket, right over my heart," Lewis continued. "When people criticize me for speaking out, when they tell me to stick to driving, I remember her. She lived in a time when she couldn't use her voice like I can now. So I speak for her, and for everyone who still struggles to be heard." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of what Lewis was sharing. "I've never told the media about this," Lewis said, taking the photo back gently. "Some things are too personal for headlines, but I wanted you to know." "Why me?" Marcus asked softly. Lewis looked at him intently. "Because at Silverstone, you reminded me why all of this matters. Sometimes, in the middle of championships and contracts and controversies, I forget the real reason I do what I do. You helped me remember." There was a moment of silence as Marcus absorbed this. Then Lewis stood up, signaling it was time for him to begin his pre-race routine. "There's one more thing," Lewis said. "Do you remember our first private conversation at Silverstone after you asked me why I bring politics into F1? Marcus nodded. "Of course. I whispered something to you at the end of that conversation," Lewis said. "Do you remember what it was?" Marcus shook his head. "You didn't whisper anything to me." Lewis smiled mysteriously. "No, I didn't. But if I had, I know exactly what I would have said." He leaned closer to Theo. "I would have told him that one day he might be standing where I am, and when that day comes, I hope he remembers this moment and uses his voice wisely. The world will be listening." Theo looked moved by Lewis's words. "That's a powerful message." Lewis checked his watch. "I need to go. The engineers will be looking for me." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Watch the start. I'm planning something special." Later, as they took their seats in the Mercedes garage, the atmosphere was electric with tension. This race would decide the championship. Team members moved with focused precision, every person aware of what was at stake. As Lewis walked toward his car for the grid formation lap, he passed by Marcus one last time. The champion was now fully in his racing mindset, focused and intense. Marcus, suddenly understanding the weight of the moment, called out, "I'll remember. I promise." Lewis turned, his expression softening momentarily. He nodded once, put on his helmet, and climbed into the silver car. As the formation lap began, Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions. excitement for the race ahead, pride at being included in this moment, and a deep understanding that sometimes the most important victories happen far from any podium. Whatever happened in the race today, Marcus knew that the real story wasn't about points or trophies. It was about finding your voice and using it for something bigger than yourself. It was about standing tall when it would be easier to stay quiet. It was about bringing humanity, not politics, to everything you do. And that was a championship worth fighting for. That was the end of our story. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey of Marcus and his discovery of identity, courage, and the true meaning behind Lewis Hamilton's activism. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know which part of the world this story reached you in. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content like this. Your support helps us create more meaningful stories that blend the excitement of sports with important life lessons. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family who might appreciate its message of standing tall in your identity and using your voice for positive change. Every share helps spread kindness and awareness. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back soon with another story that I hope will touch your heart just as much.